Let's start right away. Could you give us some information about yourself, what you studied, and what your current position at the at Taste Before You Waste is?
Yeah, so I'm Izzy. I'm the general coordinator at Taste Before You Waste. I have been so for just over a year now. What did I study? I finished my master's last year at the UvA. I did comparative cultural analysis, which is like a critical theory interdisciplinary degree, let's say. I began at Taste Before You Waste as an intern about 2 years ago, which I did an internship as part of my master's as well. And so that's how I was kind of introduced to the organization.
Okay, all right, perfect, thank you. And then maybe a quick introduction about food waste in general and food waste in Amsterdam specifically.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, food waste is a massive problem. I'll try and condense my description. But yeah, waste in general is something that's considered to be kind of defunct after primary use. So when we talk about food waste, it's kind of what's people consider no longer fit for human consumption in the eyes of whatever that may be, the aesthetic, like the sell-by date that you see. But that's only from a human perspective. Like there's no waste in nature. We are the ones that define what is waste. And also food waste in itself is not really waste because you can just consume it. Again, obviously depending on certain health factors and blah, blah, blah. So that is how we would define waste in a really convoluted way. Yeah, food waste is just a loss of food for human consumption. But the problem with food waste is not just wasted food, like food going into the bin, it's also all the resources used to create that food. So that tomato, all the water that it takes, all the human labor that it takes, all the land that it takes to make that product is also wasted in the whole process as well.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and statistically, I think, well, I don't think, it is a third of all food that's produced is wasted, which is around, I think it's 1.3 billion tons a year. Mm-hmm. And it's about, again, I think I wrote this down, it's 8% of all greenhouse gas emissions is food waste contributes to 8% of all those emissions. So yeah, it's a big problem, basically, both a social and environmental issue, because as I mentioned, there's a lot of human cost also to food waste. And also it draws on the issue of poverty and hunger as well, because, you know, we're wasting so much food, mostly in the Eurocentric Western view that could be, you know, used elsewhere as a general overview. Food waste in Amsterdam, Taste Before You Waste functions mostly in a small neighborhood where we collect our food from in Amsterdam East. Food waste, yeah, is pretty prevalent in the city, as it is everywhere. And I think it's kind of highlighted when we saw the restaurants and stuff closed as well for COVID. You can see how much food is being saved and how much food was being wasted from, you know, the days that the restaurants closed, and then we saw how much food they were going to throw away and all these examples. But coming back to the Taste Before You Waste factor, we collect it from groceries and supermarkets in Amsterdam East. And so we only see a small snippet of what is wasted in the whole city. Okay. And we also collect bread, fruit and vegetables rather than dairy and meat products as well, because of a certain amount of storage issues and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, yeah, we do collect a lot of surplus food. It's always going to be a problem, I think, that we want to create awareness about. And seeing how much food is wasted just visually from, say, one street that we collect from, I think is really important for increasing awareness.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I totally understand that. And I mean, you already kind of addressed this just now, but the second question would be how Taste Before You Waste is specifically trying to tackle this problem of food waste, but then I guess also the second SDG, which is zero hunger, which is, as you mentioned, a big part of food waste.
Mm-hmm. So, yes, we want to, basically the aim of Taste Before You Waste and our mission is this whole aspect of education and awareness. And that's quite hard to just pinpoint with one activity. So usually we function with a certain number of events, but obviously COVID doesn't allow us to do so, in that it's a lot of people meeting together. We used to and will in the future host these wasteless dinners that are run by volunteers, where we collect that surplus food, we cook it, and then we serve it for donation-based price, which makes it accessible for everyone. And the fact that it's vegan also, that means everyone can eat it.
Yeah.
Mostly. And the aim of that is also to help people visualize that, like, this food that would have been thrown away has then now made meals for, you know, we've had up to like 100 people from one day's worth of collected surplus food. So it's really like having that visual aspect of seeing the food. That's one of the reasons, one of the methods we use to like create awareness again. And also, it's not the biggest target of Tastefully Waste, as we are educationally focused, but you're right on drawing on the poverty and hunger line of it, is that, again, we try and make these dinners very accessible and that anyone can come and join. But we also have a couple of other projects, and also the way we began as Tastefully Waste was taking surplus food to more community spaces with more vulnerable people. But then we saw the gap was more about awareness, and that's where Tastefully Waste shifted from like a food donation project into the foundation that we are today, if that makes sense.
All right, so the overall mission is really the educative factor of the organization. Okay,
yeah,
I understand. Yeah. Now I would move on to kind of your background and a bit about your position at Taste Before You Waste. So you already mentioned what you studied, and but what does sustainability specifically mean to you? And why did you decide to focus on food waste in the area of sustainability?
So I'm going to start by answering the latter bit from like a personal perspective. So as I mentioned before, yeah, personally, I got involved with Taste Before You Waste as an internship when I was just looking to do something outside my master's, but still linked. Taste Before You Waste sounds like I'm really pitching it, but we offer a lot of internships, and one of them is the cultural programmer position. For one of the dinners that we host, there's always a cultural event or educational event that we try and include films, documentary, music, and blah blah blah. And so I really wanted to take part in that aspect of organizing that part of the event. And then I sort of began to learn more about the issue of food waste more intensely through being in the organization, attending all the events, being an intern. And that's sort of how I put more focus into it. So I came into Taste Before You Waste looking from like a cultural perspective, because that's my kind of academic background and interest. And then it sort of expanded into the sustainability side of it.
All right.
And in terms of like what sustainability means to me, and I think also to Taste Before You Waste, is that we really try and highlight that, again, food waste is both environmental and a social problem. And you can't really fix one without fixing the other. And I think that's the same for sustainability, is that this environmental and social aspect go hand in hand. So to me, environmental sustainability is like interacting, how do you say, like with the planet so that you don't deplete resources whilst using other resources, and you don't jeopardize the planet for the future. And we try and incorporate that in Taste Before You Waste by obviously reducing food waste, but there's also a social sustainability aspect to the organization where we are quite a big community and we want to stay socially sustainable and create a sustainable space that promotes like well-being for people as well. So where people can come together, educate themselves, educate others, and like have a good meal, let's say. So I think there's like, to knock down sustainability in those two phrases, I think is really important.
Yeah, and yeah, no, that yeah, obviously totally makes sense, and especially that Taste Before You Waste includes the social as well as the environmental factor of sustainability. And what exactly are you doing in your current position at Taste Before You Waste?
It's varied. So I am the general coordinator, which is a fairly general title. And I am the overviewer of the organization. And in that sense, at the moment, again, because it fluctuates now that we have the lockdown and all the things are changing, I'm sort of maintaining the activities of the interns and trying to progress with different projects that are COVID safe, because it's very tricky to adjust now when we are so community and events focused. So yeah, I'd also say that I'm also working quite hard on improving the financial sustainability of the organization, because without the events that we hosted and receiving those donations, we have had like a significant dip. So we've got to find other ways of making, unfortunately, as a nonprofit too, we have to make a bit of income.
Yeah.
So yeah, focusing on some other projects that will come to light soon. But when it's non-pandemic times, the coordinator is just generally the overseer of the organization, helps with recruiting the interns, training interns, maintaining the volunteer base, and kind of lots of different activities that Tasteful Waste gets involved in. We also have kind of like ad hoc projects that people contact us with, and the coordinator is that point of contact. Also between the volunteers, interns, and everyone, and the board team that we have for Tasteful Waste as a foundation as well. So it's like you're pretty key for all the sections of the organization.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, kind of like a nod point and linking everybody together, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to the internships later, but I want to know a bit more about Taste Before You Waste in general. So how does Taste Before You Waste include sustainability in their daily activities as well? Because obviously they have a very sustainable mission and goal, but how is it reflected in the day-to-day activities?
Yeah, so I think, again, split it into the environmental and social aspect. In terms of environmental sustainability, I mean, we use surplus food in all our activities. So we don't want to contribute to an unfair food system. So yeah, we collect food waste for everything. I think that's already reducing, how do you say, our impact quite a lot, our environmental impact, not social. We also always use cargo bikes to collect all the food, so carbon emissions are low. These are just practical things that I noted down. Also, yeah, all our dinners are vegan, which again is environmentally sound, but I think already that they're made from surplus food says something about that. But at the moment, obviously, we're not functioning with dinners, so instead we are taking food to different community spaces in the same vein that we took food from East of Amsterdam with the bike to supplement the dinners. We just take it to other community spaces at the moment. So drawing on that environmental sustainability of collecting food waste with a bike is the best points I could come up with. We're also, yeah, focusing on that sustainable, social sustainability, sorry, making things donation based and trying to make this surplus food that's completely edible and healthy and good also really accessible for people who need it, definitely in the pandemic now more than ever.
Yeah.
And there's a number of other things, kind of like we don't, get investments from non-environmentally sound organizations, and we don't work with certain people for that sort of reason. But I think those are probably the most highlightable points. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. And do you somehow measure the impact that you have?
Yeah, so we actually did check that. We do measure the impact, but it's quite tricky because it's like a mostly qualitative impact rather than quantitative. In terms of numbers, I just jotted something down because it's coming towards the end of the cycle of noting things. So I think we measure how much food we waste dependent on the average food wastage, which is 71 kilograms. And I think for that this year means that we've saved around 18,000 kilograms of food. And in terms of people reached, that's also very hard to estimate because we kind of did it from people that attended our events, but now we're donating food to a number of people, so in different communities, so that's quite a hard impact to measure. But we do try our best to measure impact, but those are also mostly by strong estimates, and it's hard to measure awareness, I think, because perhaps a social media post impacts someone more than you think, but
in the end you don't know to what extent that person then actually changes their or includes different practices into their daily life. But maybe you can just say what the main achievements of Taste Before You Waste were in the last couple of years, because they were founded in 2012, if I'm correct.
So sorry, I keep talking over you at your end of your questions, but So yeah, you're right. We were like formed in 2012 and we became a foundation in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been with Tastefully Waste for 2 years, so 2018, 19. I think the achievements, before I was the coordinator, we did a lot of presentations, workshops, and guest lectures in a number of different spaces, like UvA being one of them also. And the founder and previous coordinator also put in a lot of time doing workshops for school kids. So going to different spaces and teaching them the practical tips of food waste and educating a younger audience than we currently pitch to now.
Yeah.
I think that from a personal aspect that I've seen over the past 2 years in terms of achievement, alongside the impact, the numbers that I just mentioned, like it's great to save food, I think is just like creating a strong community of people that are really passionate about learning about food waste, as well as like trying to eradicate the problem as well. I really would say that, yeah, the people of Tastefully Waste and having this like strong network of volunteers that come back over and over, I think is a really, I don't know if that's classed as an achievement, but I think it's really important. And I think that that shows like a certain amount of growth for us too.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. That would have also been my next question. To what extent has there been growth of this organization over the last couple of years?
Mm. There's also, in terms of like, there's a number of different goals of Tastefully Waste, I think. And I know that one of your questions will probably be about like a franchisee aspect.
Yeah.
Currently, that's not such an aim of Tastefully Waste to create different branches. We more try to inspire people to sort of, if they're interested in setting their own branch, we're more than welcome to support them in doing so. But trying to make a number of Tastefully Waste branches isn't our biggest goal. But that doesn't mean that we are not growing like in our impact. So I know, as an example, a number of our volunteers so Tastefully Waste is based in Amsterdam East. We collect food from Amsterdam East. Well, we're in the centre East. And a number of our passionate volunteers who live in West have begun their own project collecting surplus food in Amsterdam West. So I kind of consider that, not that's Tastefully Waste claiming anything. They definitely did that of their own initiative, which is excellent. But that sort of like shows like growth and awareness, and that also that community aspect. And it's, I guess it's a small bit of franchising, but
No,
it's definitely on them. Like, I really respect that.
and also really shows the impact that the organization has.
Yeah, I hope so. But I think like, how do you say, like expansion and growth, like in that kind of, again, quantitative, I don't know how you say that, manner is not too clear from Tastefully Waste.
Okay. And I mean, you've mentioned a couple of times that you basically mostly focus on vegan food, but more specifically, how does Taste Before You Waste decide on the topics, or basically the food that is most important, or that, yeah, the topic that is most pressing to address, I would say, in the field of food waste?
That's a good question. I think that I kind of touched on it before when I talked about accessibility and the way that we collect surplus food. There's also just a number of logistical things when it comes to like collecting meat and dairy, and then like storing that and cooking that for people as well. Because then it's like all these extra hygiene things that at the moment, the space that we're based at, we don't have the capacity for that sort of storage either. But we always were vegan serving for our dinners and our markets from the beginning. And I think that is just to draw on accessibility. And I think that is like, I don't really know how else to add. I think that is the defining factor as to why we only choose those foods to collect. And they're also things that are mostly overlooked in terms of like aesthetic and how do you say, yeah, the aesthetic properties. As I mentioned at the beginning, I think, or I mentioned in my notes, is that consumers are the biggest wasters of food, and often fruits and veggies are the biggest culprits of wasted food just because of like visual imperfections. And so when we collect food that looks a bit visually sad and use it to cook in a vegan meal, I think that creates that visual awareness that I was talking about earlier as well. think that mostly answers your question.
Yeah, and it's also the main focus of your dinners and talks, basically, yeah, educating on food that has been mostly neglected or neglected the most.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. When we do sort of workshops outside of the Taste Before You Waste space, or presentations in that sense, they are focused on kind of generally the issue of food waste, which, as we've kind of touched upon, is pretty big: social, environmental, blah blah. But when we are hosting educational events within the Taste Before You Waste space, not all workshops are linked to food waste directly. Sometimes it's just broadly on the topic of sustainability and zero waste knowledge elsewhere, which links somehow to food waste. And also, as I mentioned, the internship I began with as a cultural programmer, we host an event during one of our wasters dinners, which is not always food waste based and not always educational in that sense. Sometimes, like I said, it's music, but sometimes it is a talk from another food waste expert or something like that. So again, like the focus slightly varies dependent on the event, I'd say. But as our mission is to reduce food waste and create awareness on this individual level, when we do not professional, but when we do formal workshops and presentations and talks like this, I like to promote, the food waste education is the biggest aspect.
Okay, all right, yeah, I see. You've mentioned this a couple of times now that you don't collect any dairy nor meat products, but is Taste Before You Waste planning on extending to that, or is the collection of wasted dairy and meat products never going to be a topic at Taste Before You Waste?
I'm not sure that never going to be a topic, but I think that it's just not something that's really on the cards for us. It sounds really formal, but we just never have, and it's not like we never will, but it's also, it's a case of storing things, but perhaps there's a different project in which we can distribute it in a better way, because again, like I said, you just have to store meat and dairy differently. Because of course, wasted meat, is, okay, how am I saying this? It's better to eat it than to waste it. But at the same time, I'm vegan myself, so I'm sort of leaning towards, like, I don't really, we don't really want to collect it and have stored meat that we would have to waste because no one ate it within our community. But yeah, that's not really an excuse either. I think focally it's something I have to bring up with the whole organization, and also we'd have to find a real strong system of redistributing and storing it.
Yeah, but it's basically not one of the main focuses of Taste Before You Waste.
No, because again, we want to educate people. So saving food is amazing, but saving surplus food in the end is not gonna fix the problem. It's like putting a plaster on it. You want there to be no food to save, no waste to save. So that I aim therefore is creating awareness, like I've said so many times.
And then I assume basically educating on veganism is also part of it, because it is the more sustainable option in the end. Well,
that's also a good point. We aren't like trying to shove veganism down people's throats, and if you check all our media and stuff, it's not like we are a vegan organization, but you're right, it is one of the most sustainable ways of eating. And again, vegan food is mostly edible by everyone besides allergies and stuff. It's across whatever you eat, cultures and stuff, everyone can eat it. So yeah, it keeps it accessible.
Okay. And then basically now moving a bit towards the future of Taste Before You Waste, and obviously a really present topic, the pandemic. I think you addressed it a bit before. Obviously, you can't host dinners or in-person events anymore, but how did Taste Before You Waste adjust to the pandemic?
Yeah, so I think we're only just getting into creating projects that involve our volunteers strongly, again, in a similar vein as the dinners did. But from the beginning of the pandemic, we have been, still collecting surplus food in and out when we can have events, and as we are doing at the moment, and taking it to community spaces in Amsterdam, because the food is still being wasted from the essential shops that can stay open, so supermarkets, grocery stores, and so there's still food to collect. And so we've just initiated, I think this was by a couple of volunteers way back when we had to close the first time, so March or April. And so pretty much every day of the week, we've just been getting the cargo bike, collecting the food, and depending on the network that we have, we just donate the food to those spaces. So like World House, We Are Here, these are both the English names of Dutch places. The Rainbow Group. Also Newland is done by one of the AUC volunteers. And we used to take it also to our own space as well. I think there's probably more, but off the top of my head, I can't really remember. And also there's a hostel in Nord that we've been taking food to as well. So that's sort of how we have compromised, is returning to that, not returning, but like, yeah, going back to how Tastefully Waste started, taking food to vulnerable people. We have the resources and we have the passionate volunteers to be able to do so. So we've been continuing with that mostly through the pandemic, whilst also just trying to stay afloat, basically, as an initiative that's run on donations and stuff like that. Yeah.
All right. And is Taste Before You Waste planning on expanding their network, and in which direction, in case they are?
Expanding our network. What do you mean by that? Like
grocery chains.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. So also it's a sad point is that we only have a certain amount of bikes that we can use and a certain amount of time and people. But yeah, I just bought a new cargo bike that's way bigger, which means that we can expand the supermarkets that we visit, which is quite exciting. So yeah, there are plans for that. And we also hope that I hope that also the volunteers, like I gave the example in West, who started collecting surplus food in their own neighborhood, which is completely viable for anyone. That's not necessarily the network expansion from us, but it's kind of how do you say, inspiration for people to do the same thing in their own neighborhoods, because we can't hit every supermarket in Amsterdam, however much fun that would be. Yeah, it depends on resources, but yeah, we do have plans to pick up more food for sure, because there's always surplus food at the moment, and there's definitely always people who need it. So it would be a fool not to.
And then also expand in different kind of business direction, where the company, for example, produces new products out of food that is considered waste, such as pickling, for example.
Yeah, we have had workshops based around this before, like making kombucha, making kimchi, making sauerkraut, sort of thing, products that are relatively simple to make from surplus foods, or foods that are often wasted from where we collect food. But at the moment, we don't have plans to make products, but perhaps in the future, when we can move back into our kitchen space, there might be the capacity to do so. It's always a thought that we've had. It just, again, takes that little bit extra organization. But there's definitely the possibility for it, of course.
Yeah, and for now, it's basically more so included in the education part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And now I would move on to the career opportunities and how it is possible to join Taste Before You Waste. So do you basically have any advice for students who are currently still at university and who want to work in the field of sustainability?
Yeah, sort of. When I did the careers talk way back when last year, I feel like I gave some not bad advice, but as I mentioned in this talk, the way I got into Taste Before You Waste was through kind of a different avenue, in that I wanted to be involved in the cultural programming. And then I got really interested in the organization, and then I was kind enough to be offered to be the general coordinator after like a number of, I did 2 internships here, and then I learned how to be the coordinator. So yeah, that would be my advice, is that this is also my first job outside of university too. I just did the internships and I really loved the organization, and I don't have any more advice than the fact that I really liked it, and that probably showed to the coordinator, who then offered me the role. I think, yeah, the internship avenue is a struggle, because you want to be paid fairly for the work that you do, but there is also not that many other avenues where you can kind of test the waters of an organization and really get to learn the ins and outs. So I would probably recommend if you wanted to work in sustainability, then trying to volunteer or do an internship in that organization that you're, or in that theme that you're passionate about, so you can really learn about it and then see how it works from the inside, because there's so much more organization that you need to learn alongside having a passion for a topic in a roundabout way. Like, I can be really passionate about food waste, but in order to work like in sustainability, you've also got to have that sort of mindset of how to organize things as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my advice, I think.
And I guess through your internship, you also managed to extend your network in this industry. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
helped you
exactly.
as well, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. It helps me now in terms of contacting people, say for like funding opportunities and stuff. And it also helped me back when I was an intern, and just generally learning about the different aspects of other organizations as well, that we worked with for Taste Before You Waste. So yeah, it gives you a good insight, even if you don't end up working, say, for the organization that you volunteer for or intern with. You definitely, expand your network, and will learn so much more also.
Yeah. Well, then now we can talk about the internship that you actually offer. So, how can we, how could we join Taste Before You Waste as a either volunteer or an intern?
Yeah, so for both volunteers and interns, you can check our website, and I actually just posted some vacancies for internships recently that will start at the beginning of February. We're looking for a blogger, social media coordinator, and an outreach coordinator. And then once we can have our physical events, then I will publish the roles for the cultural programmer and workshop coordinator. And there's also the availability to really fit yourself in the organization if you feel like there's something that can be done, or if you're really passionate about food waste. I always recommend people to just email and say, hi, I'm really interested, blah blah blah, and we can see if we can create positions and projects using the Taste Before You Waste kind of platform and our network to be able to like facilitate that. So if you're interested, we have an email that's like hr@tastebeforeyouwaste.org that'll it's actually on the UvA job board as well, all these internships and all that contact stuff. In terms of volunteers, I love having new volunteers. It's great. I'd again recommend emailing that email I just mentioned. Volunteer opportunities at the moment include collecting that food for all the different community spaces that I mentioned earlier. And then hopefully when we can have our events again, really organizing those, because the volunteers really are quite the heart of the organization when it comes to keeping us functioning, because, if there's no one cooking the dinners, there's no dinners to serve, sort of thing. So for all these positions, volunteering, internships, email the HR, and all the details. I never said this, but all the details are on the website, so they can see more there as well.
All right. Yeah, but that sounds like there are actually quite a few ways in which we could join organization. Yeah,
for
all
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. That was it already, actually.
Sounds good.